Hello, and welcome to the program. This is the Black Ponderer. My name is Neil Trotter. I'm the host of this YouTube channel, a channel where we talk about philosophy and philosophical texts and philosophical themes that happen to be in text. That's what we talk about here on this channel. And yeah, so we're going to be doing that. Now, the setting is, maybe it's a little messy because I moved house. So aesthetically pleasing? No, not really. Sorry, not sorry. What are you gonna do? In the middle of moving house, and it is what it is. But maybe after I get everything settled around here, maybe we can have a nice background with a bookshelf with a lot of books to showcase how much I've read, and give myself some street cred and literary and all that bullshit. But anyway, mind the mess, but I think it's all right. Anyway, today we are reading. We're going to be talking about this book here. It's called "We Will Not Cancel Us." Right? Then you got to get the thumbnail. There it is, and the subtitle is "And Other Dreams of Transformative Justice." It's by Adrienne Maree Brown. Okay, it's a little booklet, and so Adrienne Maree Brown is a very prominent, I would say, author, writer, activist, feminist, anti-capitalist, all the cool stuff that I'm into, right? I've read quite a few of her other texts. Yeah, they're great, and probably we'll be making a video about those too, but we're going to be talking about this book right here. And it's a little tiny text, less than 100 pages, and it is awesome. And it's about transformative justice, it's about abolition, it's about cancel culture, right? But when we're talking about cancel culture, oftentimes people discuss things like, the woke needs to stop being so woke, and woke ideology and CRT and grooming and all this BS, right? Whereas you're starting to see the other side of the argument against cancel culture, where it's embracing the idea, this kind of like woke ideology, which is not really, it's only a thing. That term is now used for people who are like hyper conservative or Republican. That's what they call anything they disagree with. And then when they speak out about things that they disagree with, they use that term to dismiss critical discussion about things they might not agree with. But we're getting I would say a more critical, more deep argument against the whole cancel culture, dismissal of people, and the whole call out culture from somebody, from a more leftist point of view, somebody I would say like that is quote unquote woke or whatever, and I'm here for that. And so the thing I want to do is I want to extend that beyond the realm of activism, right, which is a very important realm, right? I'm currently involved in community activism myself, not saying that that's something that we need to overlook. But you can expand that further into the other realms, just discourse in general. You can expand that particularly in the realm of philosophical discourse, right? And the book talks about online discourse on the internet and how shallow it is, because every time we confront something that we disagree with, we immediately are compelled to cancel it and dismiss it very quickly. And it goes much deeper than that as well. It talks about how certain people who are horrible and who have caused harm to other people, how we quickly tend to dismiss those people and cancel those people, and how maybe we should go about that approach differently, because is that approach actually working in the reduction of harm that was caused? The book argues no. So that's a very important part of this book. But I would like to kind of focus more on shifting this very great argument into the realm of just online discourse in general. One of the reasons why I started this channel over 10 years ago, right? Because I was also one of those people who looked at the state of discourse today, just discussion, constructive debate. Many people argue, well, debate in and of itself is not constructive. There's no such thing as constructive debate. I beg to differ. Right? If your focus is just getting at the right answer or the correct answer rather than just winning, right? Really good argument or something like that. But it gets deeper than that, right? Because people take their positions personally, and people feel attacked when they confront something that disagrees with their beliefs or their ideas. And then what happens is people start calling each other out. There's personal attacks, but not just personal attacks, it's just this immediate dismissal, right? Oh, you don't understand, you're an anarchist, oh, you're an abolitionist, oh, you're a neoliberal, oh, you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, And you can go further, if you were talking about philosophy, oh, you're a Stoic, who cares about what Stoics think? Oh, you're the transcendentalist, right? Oh, you're one of those existentialists. Oh, you're into that continental philosophy? Shit. Oh, you're into that Ayn Rand shit. Your objectivism. Like, oh, I don't even want to talk to you. And, discourse now has become so shallow. And it's really sad. It's really sad, right? So let's get into that. Let's read some quotes from this book. Oh, it's in reverse. Let's read some quotes from this book, and we can get into it. Okay, so in case you have this book, this is page 42, okay? And this is the fourth paragraph, all right? Currently, a wide variety of harm doing gets collapsed into one label of bad, disposable person / organizations, right? Quote unquote, and receives one punishment, a call out, often for some form of instant cancellation, and in relation alongside of sometimes overlapping with these circles of naming harm and abuse are conflicts. So cancel culture, and she's specifically talking about when somebody calls somebody harm, like somebody abuses somebody. You get abusers who are popular, they get called out for the abuse, and then they get canceled or dismissed completely, which is definitely a real thing, right? So that's part of what we're talking about. But I'm more so talking about just dismissing somebody because, what their ideas are, you feel they are very harmful and destructive. And so you don't even want to talk to them. They're like, oh, you just don't understand. What you're saying is horrible. And there's no way I can get through to you. And you're a horrible person, and I only want to talk to you. and so, at a certain line, you do have to do that. But I think we are too quick, too fast to just go that way. And so critical thought just gets kind of just thrown out the window. We don't really know how to talk with people who we disagree with anymore in a constructive way. And so you have all this divisiveness and this polarization, and it's not very constructive at all, and it disallows us the ability to solve problems that we need solutions for. But let me continue here. Our conflicts, our interpersonal disagreements can currently get escalated into the language and response of harm and abuse. We are afraid, and we think it will assuage our fears and make us safer if we can clarify an enemy, someone outside of ourselves who is to blame, who is guilty, who is the origin of harm. Can we acknowledge that trauma and conflict can distort our perspective of responsibility and blame in ways that make it difficult to see the roots of the harm? So what type of trauma and conflict are we talking about? In the heat of the moment, and it's not just trauma, for example, somebody's a horrible person has abused somebody, whether it be like sexual abuse or verbal abuse or physical abuse or that kind of like extreme examples, which are prominent and real, and that's something that we definitely need to consider. But I would say that we live in a society where where trauma is something that we are exposed to just by default, and societal trauma, right? Pressures of society, our expectations that we are pushed upon everybody, And that has really damaged our ability to constructively work through disagreements that are hard, that are like really complicated, complex disagreements, but are kind of necessary to work through so that we can progress as a society. But the pressures and the expectations and the default ways we're supposed to be have traumatized us, and we don't know how to deal with conflict anymore. So I'm trying to I want to explain, because this can be expanded more universally or generally to not just sexual predators or instances where people have said something that has caused like physical violence, that's important too. But this could be expanded more broadly to like, why can't we talk about the things we disagree with in a constructive way, right? So let me continue. Can we acknowledge that trauma and conflict can distort our perspective and responsibility and blame in ways that make it difficult to see the roots of the harm? Instant judgment and punishment are practices of power over others. It's what those with power do to those who can't stop them, who can't demand justice. This injustice of power is practiced at an individual level and a collective level. What concerns me, the author, is how often it feels like this instant reaction is happening within movement. It feels like a feeding frenzy. So yeah, exerting power over others, that's like a response that we're taught to implement, right? When we feel threatened or danger, right? So when we confront ideas that threaten our beliefs, our society conditions us to go into this default mode, like, okay, I'm just gonna exert my power over you and shut you up, right? And as opposed to like, well, let's work this out. Let's try and figure out where can we grow and learn, and what are the actual causes of the harm that you believe in, or where did you learn these things, and are these things really true? Like, we don't even go there because we're afraid, right? But I like this metaphor she uses, feeding frenzy. In nature, a feeding frenzy happens when predators are overwhelmed by the amount of prey available. This can cause them to go wild, biting anything that moves, including each other or anything else within biting range. There is an abundance of harm, abuse, and righteousness conflict surrounding us right now, but we in movement don't identify with predators. Our historical reality is that we are the prey, trying to defend ourselves, protect each other. There is such complexity with trying to name this dynamic within ourselves. And I like that kind of metaphor because, like I was saying, we've all been traumatized, to various levels, right? Some people have really been traumatized, others not so much, but it's all relative, and all degrees of trauma are bad, right? And so we live in this world where the expectations that are put upon us, and the pressures of society, and the way we're expected to do things, and the violence that we see in the world, and the violence that we experience in the world is constantly bombarding onto us. This is the world we live in, and so we're just like in this by default mode of fight or flight, and it confuses us. So what's happening is when we encounter ideas and opinions and beliefs that go against what we believe, and we immediately go into like, well, F you, like you're nothing, I don't even want to talk to you. This idea is stupid, right? As opposed to like, well, why do you think that way? Or like, where did this come from, this belief? Is there some validity in what you're talking about? Or if there's not, like, how can I explain to you, or like have a common conversation of redirection, right? But we don't go there, right? Because we're too busy just like being bombarded by all the trauma that society dumps onto us. And it's like this feeding frenzy, right? And I think that's a very accurate or explanation of what's going on, on websites like X, formerly known as Twitter, flame wars, and that kind of thing. This is page 44, second paragraph. How do we in movements become responsible for each other, accountable to a vision beyond the carceral system? that will only come to pass if we practice it in the present. She's talking about abolition because she's an abolitionist, right? She believes like by default, our response to bad behavior is punish you, enforce violence onto you, then you'll learn, right? But she's saying, look, is that working? Like, no, it's not working, right? So what can we do to actually solve the problem of harm? Like, how can we actually address the harm that's caused, right? This generation of movements for justice didn't create this punitive system of justice. We didn't create the state. We didn't choose to be socialized within it. We want to dismantle these systems of harm, of mass harm. And I know that most of us have no intention of ever mimicking state processes of navigating justice. And so she's talking about like within the leftist movements of abolition, these abolitionists or community activists. She's just talking about that circle of people, like people within that arena, that scope. They're canceling themselves out, right? As if you check that out, there's all these people who are part of the left. They're like, oh, that guy is not a real leftist. That woman is not a real leftist. That person's not a real feminist. F that person. That person's not a real abolitionist. And what she's saying is, we know like we're doing this because we've been conditioned to do this, but that's not your true intention. You're just like in this flight or fight response, right? And I would just further extend that, right, to when we encounter things we disagree with, right? And we're in just discourse, online discourse, and immediately people are just dismissing everybody. The intention is not necessarily like, I just don't want to talk to you. Because we do want to talk to each other. I believe that. It's just we don't know how, or we've lost the ability to do it because we're in these systems of mass harm, right? And so we need to address that. The tools of swift and predatory justice feel good to use. Familiar, groove in the hand, easily from repeated use in training, briefly satisfying. But those tools are often blunt and senseless. Unless we have an analysis of abolition and dismantling systems of oppression, so we are talking about abolition here. Let's not get it twisted. We will not realize what's in our hands. We will never put the predator's tools down and figure out what our tools are and can be. Why does it feel like we are committed to punishment and enjoying it? Why do our movements more and more often feel like we are moving with sharp teeth against ourselves? And what is at stake because of that pattern, that feeling? These are philosophical questions, by the way. But I continue. Why does it feel like someone pointing at someone else and saying, that person is harmful? And with no questions or process or time to breathe, we are collectively punishing them, tearing them, and anyone protecting them to shreds. That's like our default mode. Oh, you're wrong? Cancel. Get rid of him. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a piece of shit. Which, maybe those things are true. But we stop there. Like, we can't just stop there. We got to figure out, okay, what happened here? We got to do like some kind of root cause analysis. But let me continue. Sometimes we even do it with the language of transformative justice, claiming that we are going to give them room to grow. They need to disappear completely to be accountable. We are publicly shaming them so that they will learn to be better. Underneath this logic, I hear, the author is hearing, we are good and we are getting rid of the bad people in our community or movement. We are affirming our righteousness and power. We are getting rid of the bad people. We're making sure that, our community doesn't get tainted, right? Doesn't get disturbed, right? We're actually doing a good thing. And, they're trying to take our power away. See, it's centered around the obsession of power, as opposed to like trying to understand, right? And it's the fear that's like driving us to do this, right? Rather, like I'm saying, like what's important is like we got to get at understanding, right? That's the philosophical way, that's, I believe in philosophy. That's why this the channel that I host. But the fear is making us say, oh, they just need to be punished. F them. There's no reason to understand their point of view. Or there's this belief like, oh, I understand what they're doing. It's harmful or it's stupid. It's like, well, that's very one-dimensional. Like, why? Right? But let me skip down 1.5 paragraphs. The call out can be the only move that stops the immediate harm without engaging the state. Right? And you could see that both ways. You know, she's talking about the state, you know, the carceral state, you know, the state power, right? You know, but I'm even going further and just saying the state, the other definition of state, like the mode of being, right? This constant state of fear, right? Of just like, oh shit, like I'm always getting attacked. Everybody's, you know, I gotta protect myself before I wreck myself, you know, that kind of like, and so you're just like calling people out and canceling people instead of like, okay, we need to like work this out. Shaming behaviors of abuse in a culture where they have been normalized is and has been necessary survival technology. Okay, it's necessary, but it's not the end all be all, right? And then we're on page 46. This is the last sentence of the 4th paragraph. Call outs don't work for addressing misunderstandings, issuing critiques, or resolving contradictions. Call outs feel more powerful when they are used with their tactical intention for those with less positional, political, economic, or other power to demand accountability to stop harm and abuse. So, you know, calling somebody out, be like, oh, dude, you need to stop. What you're saying is very harmful, and we need to stop legitimizing your position. Right? You know, doing that kind of stuff, that's good, but that's only part of the tactics. Right? There needs to be more tactics to actually address the harm that was caused. And I would argue a lot of harm is caused by not reconciling or resolving or understanding complex ideas that disagree with each other, right? A lot of harm is caused by that too. And then the author says, I want to spend some time here because even in that context, I believe we have a responsibility to be in principled struggle and transformative justice, to see consequences in a context of ancestral, generational, and present-day trauma, to unlearn the pleasure of punishing each other with public humiliation and shame. Okay. And then I put in my notes here, sometimes necessary, yeah, the calling out is necessary, but isn't the root cause analysis? Yeah, exactly. Abolition, so abolition is not just, is root cause analysis is what I wrote. It's not just saying like, well, we're getting away with police and prisons and, you know, surveillance, and that's it. You know, if you understand the activist movement of abolition within that framework, and I've made several videos about abolition. Check them out if you are interested in that. But you know, abolish the police, abolish prisons, abolish like surveillance. Like, why? You know, it's not, abolition doesn't just stop there. Right? It doesn't just stop there. Right? It's saying, because why do we need to abolish these things? Because they are blocking our ability to understand the root cause of harm and lack of safety and lack of understanding. It's just this, you know, it's a carceral way of doing things, just like cancel culture is, similar in that way. And so we don't ultimately solve the problems of our society. It just perpetuates them. Let me continue here on page 52. This is the second sentence of the second paragraph. I want us to see the difference between the human and the disease, to see what we are afraid of in others and in ourselves, and discern a path that actually addresses the root of our justified fears. Okay, and you know, the difference between the human and the disease. And here she's using a common metaphor of, look, you know, somebody who has a disease might be affected negatively by that disease, but that doesn't mean the person is the disease, right? But you know, in our current system is like, we treat the human as a disease. Like, you know, if we're talking just about cancel culture and we look at the extreme example of like, well, this person's a sexual predator, right? They need to be canceled, right? Which is valid. But then it's like, this person is sexual abuse, right? This person is sexual abuse, which is like, that's not the case. This person did sexual abuse, right? But they are not in and of itself sexual abuse. So you're not addressing the overall problem of sexual abuse, right? You're just punishing the human that did it, which is, you know, the human that did it, they need to be held accountable, right? And there needs to be consequences for that human that need to be addressed, sure, absolutely. But then we don't address the issue of like, okay, why is this happening? Why did this person do this? Well, the person is sick, right? They are immoral, they're evil. It's like, you can associate those things to that person, but the problem is that doesn't do anything to address the overall problem of sexual abuse. Now, some people will say like, well, you know, sexual abuse is just something that's going to exist in our society. And that's just how it is. And so the abolitionists will be like, no, right? No, actually, we can deal with this issue. This issue can be dealt with. We can dramatically decrease the amount of sexual abuse that happens in our society, but we're just so focused on punishment and inflicting violence on harm doers that we're not addressing the problem in and of itself. And, you know, I would like to extend that further to ideas, where it's like, man, these people just have these bad ideas. They need to be eliminated. They need to be destroyed. They need to be canceled. It is like, okay, we do that, but those ideas are still going to exist and perpetuate, because you're not dealing with the ideas. You're just dealing with the people that implement those ideas. But we need to deal with the ideas themselves, right? And we got to understand, where do these ideas come from? Why do they exist? Why are people implementing them? You know, so forth and so on. And she further says, this is not a case against call-outs, right? There is absolutely a need for certain call-outs when power is greatly imbalanced and efforts have been made to stop ongoing harm. When someone accused of harm won't participate in community accountability processes or honor requested boundaries, the call-out is a way of pulling an emergency brake. But call-outs need to be used specifically for harm and abuse, and within movement spaces, they should be deployed as a last option, right? And then I would go further and say, it's a last option, it's an emergency brake, but we use the call-outs or the cancel culture. That's the only thing that we do, right? That's the only way we address the issue, and then that's it. It's like, well, there needs to be some follow-up, right? There needs to be like, okay, some attempt at understanding, right? Some critical discussion of what actually happened. And then this is page 56, the end of the second line. Online, we perform solidarity for strangers rather than engaging in hard conversation with comrades. We are fearful of taking the time to be discerning, because then we may have to recognize that we aren't as skilled at conflict as we want and need to be, and or that any of us could be seen as harm doers, right? You know, we hold these positions firm. It's like, I believe this and this is correct. We're afraid. The fear is actually when we confront people who we disagree with. Now, I'm taking it more broadly with, philosophical conversation. The fear is like, maybe like that thing that I thought so firmly, maybe there's some issues and problems here within that kind of thinking that I need to rethink myself, right? And that can be scary, but it's work that needs to be done. And it's constructive, progressive work. When we do step up to say, wait, let's get understanding here, we risk becoming the new target, viewed as another accomplice to harm instead of understood as a comrade in ending harm. Viewed as an opposition in conflict instead of someone trying to find movement alignment. Yeah, and so again, she's talking about within leftist groups, it's like, well, the abolitionists may talk with the neoliberal, and it's like, you're talking to that neoliberal, you sell out abolitionists, right? So she's talking about that. It's like, well, let's try and understand each other first before we completely dismiss them. But I'm just talking more so just disagreeing ideas, which, happens a lot on my channel with the comment section, and, more generally with discourse about like complex, deep ideas generally in many fields of thought. You're going back and forth, then you're like, well, I disagree, but let's try and figure out like where our disagreements are. Like, what are you doing? You're capitulating here. You're and then there's this fear about like, oh, if I do that, then maybe the person will win, their argument, or like, maybe my argument will be seen as less strong. It's like, it's not about that, right? It's about trying to solve problems. It's about trying to get at answers. It's trying to get at truth, understanding. And if that means a little bit of capitulation, then so be it. Or, maybe, we automatically think that's capitulating. Maybe it's not, right? Maybe it's just like, I just want to get at I just want to understand your point of view. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I just want to understand your point of view, but there's a fear there, right? That the author mentions. And then she goes on to say, perhaps most dangerously, we are all together now teetering on the edge of hopelessness. Because like I was saying, the state of the world and the trauma that we experience on a day-to-day basis, it brings us to a state of nihilism, right? And then I skip down 5 lines here. Some of us are losing hope, tossed by the tornado, ungrounded and uprooted by the pace of change, seeking something tangible we can do, control, hold, throw away. But then she continues on the top of page 57. Movements need to grow and deepen. We need to transform ourselves to transform the world, to be transformed in the service of the work. And what type of work? She's talking about activism work. I'm just talking about like having constructive, meaningful, progressive discourse about conflicting ideas that are very important. That kind of work, right? And be open to transformation. Like maybe your ideas need to be changed as well as the other person. Maybe not, but you gotta allow that to happen. Movements need to become the practice ground for what we are healing towards, co-creating. Movements are responsible for embodying what we are inviting our people into. We need the people within our movements, all socialized into and by unjust systems, to be on liberation paths. Not already free, but practicing freedom every day. Not already beyond harm, but accountable for doing our individual and internal work to end harm and engage in generative conflict, which includes actively working to gain awareness of the ways we can have harmed each other, where we have significant political differences, and where we can end cycles of harm and unprincipled struggle in ourselves and our communities. So she's talking about generative conflict. Conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as it's generative, right? It is constructive, like you grow from it. You're inevitably going to meet somebody who disagrees with you, or somebody who says something to you that might harm you, right? I mean, we do harm each other without even knowing it, because part of it is that's kind of what it means to be human. We make mistakes, but another aspect of it is the society that we live in conditions us to participate in these harmful systems, like capitalism, which is based on exploitation, and patriarchy, where the woman is submissive and the man is dominant, and that whole hierarchical structure, which puts a lot of pressure on people, puts a lot of expectations on people, and forces people into untrue states of being, right? And so on and so forth. This is how we harm each other, right? But that can change, but we have to be comfortable with confronting these systems of power that are harmful to us, and that's going to lead us to conflict, which we can't be afraid of. These systems do push us toward these states of hopelessness, right? Nihilism, where it's like, oh man, the world is so jacked up. I just don't see how we can save it, or we can do better, right? And then it's like, well, you know, then the nihilism kicks in, like, you know, fuck it, the world's fucked, you know, I just want to burn it all. It's like, no, we have to just, it does take a little bit of bravery where it's like, you know what, I'm going to try, you know, I'm going to try to deal with this head on. Right? I'm going to try and get to the understanding aspect. But, you know, it's an overcoming of fear, and it's like a denial of that default response that we're programmed to do, right? When we're faced with conflict, to immediately punish, to exhibit violence. You know, instead of that, let's try to exhibit a desire to understand, right? That doesn't mean dismissing accountability and, you know, holding those who do harm accountable. That doesn't mean throwing that away. But it means coming at it from a desire of understanding rather than, first and foremost, a desire to punish. And then she continues, knee-jerk call-outs say, those who cause harm or mess up or disagree with us cannot change and cannot belong. They must be eradicated. The bad things in the world cannot change. We must disappear, the bad, until there is only good left. And, you know, that's not what abolition is. You know, some people will beg to differ, like, yeah, that's what the abolitionists want to do. No, like, that's what abolitionists reject, right? So it's interesting. And we just continue onward. But one layer under that, what I hear is, we cannot change. We do not believe we can create compelling pathways from being harm doers to being healed to growing. We do not believe we can hold the complexity of a gray situation. We do not believe in our own complexity. We do not believe we can navigate conflict and struggle in principled ways. We can only handle binary thinking, good, bad, innocent, guilty, angel, abuser, black, right, etc. Right? This is the current state of society, of the world. Like, people just accept that. Well, you know, that's just human nature. You know, we're simple beings. You know, we can't handle complexity. People don't really change, right? Which is just bullshit, right? It really is bullshit, but our society programs us to think this way because the small minority that benefit from these societal structures get, you know, societal, social, economic benefit from that way of thinking. But we gotta change it up, right? We gotta make a society that benefits all people rather than a small minority, right? I skip down 3 lines. When we engage in knee-jerk call-outs as a conflict resolution device or issue instant consequences with no process, we become a cancer unto ourselves, unto movements and communities. And that was the separation of the human and disease. You know, bringing up cancer here. We become the toxicity we long to heal. We become a tool of harm when we are trying to be, and I think, meant to be a balm, right? Agreed. And then I'll read here on page 69, 3rd paragraph, 3rd line. We need to center and build relationships with one another and not keep tearing one another down publicly without trying to have direct conversations. While there are many places of learning, growth, and contradictory practice within the world we live in, why can't we talk to one another directly and allow room for learning from our mistakes or differences? Right, I agree. And honestly, that's the realm of philosophy. I mean, what is philosophy? Well, part of it is talking to one another directly and allowing room for learning from our mistakes or differences. That is part of philosophy, and fostering a place of learning, growth, and contradictory practice within the world we live in. All right, that's what it means to be philosophical, in my opinion. Now, is the current when you go into spaces that claim that they are about philosophy, is that what's happening? No, that's why I started this channel. You know, of course, there are several places where that is, you know, that growth does happen. Sure, I'm not going to knock that. But there are a lot of places within philosophy where, like, you know, it's basically cancel culture. It's the same kind of shit. And, you know, and that's where I'm coming from. But as Adrienne Maree Brown is saying, like, look, it's in the leftist groups as well. It's the same kind of shit that's going on, and it's just everywhere. Right? It's it within all groups, right? Where we're just conditioned to be like, oh, harm, cancel you, push you aside, get rid of you, instead of trying to understand what the hell just happened. Why are we here? What do we need to do to make this better? Right? Why did this person do what they did? Can we do something that will make it so people don't do this kind of harm anymore? These are the questions that we should be asking and, working toward answering, right? But the cancel culture doesn't allow us to do it. So I would encourage you, check out this little book, less than 100 pages, We Will Not Cancel Us. It has a lot of philosophy. Don't be one of those people that's like, oh, it's one of those leftist books. Well, I'm not reading it. I don't read leftist literature. Like, there you go again, canceling and dismissing and like not thinking clearly, constructively, or like not thinking critically. It's sad, this is pretty sad, but there you have it. But I would encourage you, check it out. Anyway, you've been watching the Black Ponderer. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.